Part 68. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 672. Thinking of the scene just now, Lily felt murderous intent towards the man whose appearance he couldn't see clearly. She carefully recalled the size of the man just now. At this moment, the taste of blood seemed to still be in her mouth. She was ready to keep these evidences, and one day when she finds out who dared to attack her, she will definitely pay him back 1,000 times. After sitting on the ground for a while, her whole body ached. Lily stretched out her hands to support herself and stood up. Thinking of the scene just now, luckily she had calmed down before. If it had been any other woman, the more panicked she was at that time, the easier it would be for something to happen. Maybe this someone had already succeeded. Lily felt uneasy, so she stretched out her hand to make sure that the door was indeed locked, and turned the lock until it was locked. Then she limped towards the toilet. Although she felt nervous just now, I was in pain all over my body, but I could still bear it. When I returned home, I felt relieved. Every piece of flesh in my body began to feel weak, and it seemed that I couldn't even stand still. The light in the toilet was turned on, revealing the small space. Toiletries were placed in front of an old sink. A fat woman with a swollen face like a pig's head was revealed in the mirror. Her face was now bruised and purple, and there were several different faces. Regular fingers were printed on both cheeks. It was obvious that the original owner had been slapped more than once or twice by the man just now. Lily felt a little angry in her heart. A stinging pain came from her face when she gritted her teeth. She made a sound of sucking cold air from her mouth. He took a tissue and first took out some of the blood on his mouth, and then cleaned himself up. Then he dragged his tired body back to the bedroom, threw himself on the bed, and never got up again. At this moment, after being slapped, my ears were buzzing. Not only was my head swollen and painful, but I also felt nauseous and wanted to vomit. She must have suffered a slight concussion. Lily wished she could close her eyes and fall asleep immediately, but she didn't dare to sleep yet. She hadn't figured out the original owner's situation yet. She closed her eyes and allowed a large amount of memories and plots to flood into her mind. The already uncomfortable feeling doubled as she received the plot. A lot of cold sweat broke out all over her body. A cell phone seemed to ring nearby, but Lily did not reach out to pick it up. Instead, she curled up into a ball. Cheng Bei was born into a well-to-do family in an imperial city. She had bad luck. Her parents got married early. Because her mother did not conceive a child for 7 or 8 years after her marriage, life in her husband's family was not easy. Cheng's mother-in-law put a lot of pressure on her. It was not easy for Cheng's mother in those years, especially since Cheng Bei's father was a single son for several generations. He was the only child in the family. There was no news about Cheng's mother, and there was no news in her husband's family. Can't hold my head up. At that time, when Cheng's mother was almost cornered, she finally became pregnant with Cheng Bei. The time when I was pregnant with Lily. My mother is over 30 years old. In addition, when she married my father earlier, she was neglected by her husband's family because she had no children. She couldn't eat well or sleep well all day, and her health was very bad, so she became pregnant. Her health was not good after getting pregnant with Cheng Lily. When she was pregnant with Cheng Lily, she almost showed signs of miscarriage several times. In order to keep the grandson she thought she was carrying, Cheng Lily's grandmother took her to many visits. The goddess ate many talismans and worship items prescribed by Taoist monks. In the end, Cheng Lily almost didn't survive. In such an environment, Cheng Bei was born with poor health and almost didn't survive after birth. When she found out that her grandson, whom the family had been waiting for many years, had turned into a granddaughter, Cheng Bei's grandmother turned against her on the spot and didn't like the young Cheng Bei. After a few years of living with her daughter, the adult mother became pregnant again. At that time, Cheng Bei was tortured when she was in her mother's womb. She is not in good health. The child learns to walk when she is 1 year old. When she is more than 3 years old, she can only crawl on the ground and needs someone to take care of her. Cheng Bei's grandma does not like Cheng Bei, a loser with poor health, and refuses to help her on weekdays. Cheng's mother took care of her. After Cheng's mother became pregnant, she had no way to take care of the child. Cheng Bei's grandmother encouraged Cheng's mother several times to give the child away. In the end, Cheng's mother had no choice but to give Cheng Lili to a relative for adoption. I don't know who it was. It was not destiny that the adult mother failed to give birth to a son, but instead gave birth to a daughter. It doesn't feel good to be adopted by others. Because of Cheng Bei's poor health, the person who adopted her didn't like her. When she was sick, no one would take her to the hospital. She had endless things to do every day. Cheng Bei was like a free laborer in other people's homes. After going to school, she would have endless things to do when she came home from school every day. Until she entered middle school, her adopter no longer wanted to pay for her tuition, and when she was asked to drop out of school, work, get married, and raise a son for that family, Cheng Bei resisted for a while and insisted on studying. The result was that her adopter was impatient to continue raising her as a loser and sent her back to Chengdu home. In the past few years, the situation of Cheng's family has gradually become much better than before. After Cheng's family was demolished, they were divided into 2 houses. Cheng's father also made some money from his business. For Cheng Bei, the eldest daughter, the parents actually felt that she owes something, but Cheng Bei always feels a little out of place in this family. There are those who don't like her, treat her as an enemy, and always think she is a sister who comes back to steal her parents' love, and there are also grandfathers who raise their noses and eyebrows at her. Grandma, she is like a clown who has broken into the elf country, feeling vigilant and scared every day. Her younger sister Changbian looks different from her. She is more than 3 years younger than her, but she has been smart and well-spoken since she was a child. Even her grandparents who don't like her daughter like her. In school, her younger sister has good academic performance, but her grades are just average. The important thing is that although she was in poor health after graduating from junior high school, she gained weight inexplicably. She had gained weight for several years. She spent her 3 years in high school amidst the ridicule of the school. Her grades were not good and her parents paid for her to go to high school. When she took the high school graduation exam, she was originally unable to pass the mock exam. Her parents were worried about her at that time. I contacted her work unit, but I don't know if she had some divine help, but she actually performed exceptionally well in the end. She was not far behind the admission score of an aristocratic university in the imperial capital. In the end, her family contributed some money and sent her to school. During her college days, Cheng Lili was the most unpopular person in the class. She was fat and introverted. No one wanted to make friends with her. Among a group of fashionable and beautiful classmates, she was just like a girl who fell into the trap. The ugly duckling among the swans, has low self-esteem and is timid. Her younger sister is different. She is beautiful, smart, and outgoing, and her grades have always been very good. She was named the campus beauty when she entered university. There are as many boys chasing her as stars. Cheng Bei is not a few years older than her, and she was also envious in her heart. She is a younger sister, but her unattractive appearance and unlovable personality mean that she doesn't even have friends, let alone anyone who would chase her. She originally thought that she would survive until she graduated from college, work in a job arranged by her parents, follow her parents' instructions, get married, and live an ordinary life. However, in the first semester of her senior year, a man named Zhang Sun's classmate expressed his affection for her. Cheng Bei was almost flattered. Zhang Sun was of average height and not good looking. He was born in a rural area in other provinces. He was a famous person in the class but from a poor family. He relied on his own. Ben was admitted to a university in the imperial capital. Because he was not good looking and came from a poor family, he didn't have many friends during his college years. In a way, he was in a similar situation to Chen Beihee. Chen Beihee, who has never had a boy express her love for her since she was a child, was surprised and excited by Jang Sun's actions. The two people who share the same fate slowly came together. She once brought Jang Sun home. Jang Sun, whose appearance, figure, and family background were not as good as Chengbian's boyfriend, but he was very good to Chen Beihee. After paying her living expenses, she was willing to buy some snacks for her. When Chengbian sometimes despised Chen Beihee for not having any future prospects and finding a man like Jang Sun, Chen Beihee always felt like she had found a treasure. When her sister said this, she didn't mind. After all, she knew her situation. She couldn't reach the real Prince Charming. A considerate and good man like Jang Sun was just right for her. She fantasized about the two of them getting married after graduation, having jobs, and having a baby, and that she would have no regrets in this life. However, a nightmare befell Chen Beihee. She was surrounded by Jang Sun after a night study. After walking around the school playground for a few times, when she returned to her rented house off campus, Chen Lily was raped by a man. She struggled and resisted at that time, but she could not fight against the man in the darkness. After what happened to her, Jang Sun called her and asked if she had returned home. From her panicked voice, Jang Sun realized that something happened, and I discovered it when I arrived. She originally thought that Jang Sun would despise her after she was raped. Chen Beihee even gritted her teeth and held back tears and broke up with her. She did not have a beautiful appearance and a perfect figure. Now even her virginity was ruined. She originally wanted to this first time was on their wedding night, but now she has nothing. Jang Sun refused her request to break up, but instead comforted her, saying that he loved Chen Lily's heart rather than her appearance, and even wanted to express his love for Lily. Determined, Jang Sun proposed marriage to her. When she was so severely hurt, this man did not abandon her but cared for her so much. Chen Beihee's gratitude and love for Jang Sun at that moment was simply beyond words. From then on, she became even more humble in front of Jang Sun and did not even dare to say anything to her. He spoke loudly, and she felt that she was already dirty and no longer worthy of Jang Sun. She accommodated Jang Sun in every possible way in her daily life, even to the point where she had to kneel on the ground to get water from Jang Sun to wash his feet every day, and came to Jang Sun when eating. Sundu opened her mouth after a meal, and she carefully tried to please Jang Sun, not daring to complain at all. However, the news of her rape was spread to the school somehow. To be continued. Canon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 673. People in the school pointed at her and made her timid. Chen Beihee became even more introverted and cowardly. She did not dare to go to school anymore and went through the procedures to drop out. Her family members were raped because of her. Jang Sun was also very courteous to Jang Sun. His father and mother helped Jang Sun find a job and help him settle down with his parents in his hometown. After he graduated, they even bought a house for Chen Beihee and they got married. It was just their life after marriage. It was not pleasant. I wonder if it was because Chen Beihee was raped. Jang Sun, who was originally gentle and considerate, slowly began to have a violent temper. He even started to attack Chen Beihee. Chen Lily endured the first attack, and then countless times. Jang Sun's mother called Chen Lily a shabby shoe, disliked her, beat and scolded her. Chen Lily spent the days at home, and her sister Chenbian often looked down at her with a condescending look, and laughed at her for finding such a good-for-nothing man. Her sister's life was getting better and better, and her husband treated her like a treasure in his palm. He worked exhaustingly every day, 25 years old. The people who arrived looked older than those in their 50s. Even after Cheng Bei became pregnant, Jiang's mother beat her into having a miscarriage. Cheng Bei couldn't bear the humiliation of such a life and suffered from severe depression. She was resigned to Jiang Sun's disease, and she was a little tired of living this kind of life. Until one time when Jiang Sun beat her again, disliked her, scolded her and told her to get out, Cheng Bei shrank into a corner and cooked a meal for Jiang Sun. When he was about to beg him for forgiveness, he overheard Jiang Sun calling his friends to show off. They asked him for a magic weapon to tame his wife, and he proudly revealed the truth. The man who raped Cheng Lili back then was Jiang Sun. He was from the countryside and wanted to stay in the imperial capital. He had to find a girl with imperial household registration. All his classmates looked down on him, so he could only set his sights on Cheng Lili. This timid girl with low self-esteem was a good target for him. He suppressed his temper to please her for several months, but Jiang Sun looked down on Cheng Lili deep down. He also had his own male chauvinism, and he didn't like to please her in front of a woman. Therefore, in order to make Cheng Lili unable to hold her head up in front of him, he raped Cheng Lili, so that from now on she could only kneel in front of him, put down her dignity and let him trample on her. He succeeded, and starting a family turned out to be just as he had imagined. Cheng Bei tried to please him in every possible way, and Cheng Bei even let him be beaten and scolded. His big man mentality was fully reflected in front of the married couple. When you know all this, Cheng Bei almost went crazy. She wanted to question Jiang Sun, but her body was already in bad condition and had been severely depleted over the years. The moment she knew the truth, she could no longer move. She fall to the ground. Only the panicked discussions between Jiang Sun and her son were heard. Finally, something covered her mouth and nose, and Cheng Bei never woke up again. It's just that she hates Jiang Sun. She hates Jiang Sun for ruining her life and making her suffer for many years for his own selfish desires. Her self-esteem, spirit and body have been ravaged over the years. She clings on to life, and she always feels that life is worse than death. She hated Jiang Sun, the beast, and she wanted Jiang Sun to end badly. She was not reconciled to why she did not live a good life for a few days in her life. Finished receiving the plot, Lily couldn't help holding her sore head and gasping for several breaths. She originally thought about keeping blood samples to find out the person who dared to attack her and take revenge. Now that she has received the plot and memories, she doesn't need to pursue them anymore. Know who this man is? Lily sneered and endured the pain in her head. As she struggled to sit up, the cell phone beside her was still ringing. While receiving the plot and memories, Lily's already bruised cheeks became even more swollen. Her eyes could hardly be opened. They were a little congested now. She could see the light on the phone and couldn't see who was calling. She swiped the phone with her fingers several times before finally picking it up. Before she put it to her ear, a man yelled angrily. It rang. Hey! Why did it take you so long to answer the phone? Her ears were buzzing at first, but when she heard the shouting, Lily couldn't help but retched. Before she could speak, the man couldn't help but said, I'm in the hospital, I just came out of hospital, I was injured in a car accident, please send me some money. Lily felt resentment in her heart for no reason. She endured the pain in her head and opened her eyes desperately. When she saw Jiang Sun's name displayed on the phone, she hung up the phone without hesitation. At this moment, she couldn't help but feel sleepy, but Lily didn't dare to sleep. If she fell asleep in this situation, she would be 100 times more uncomfortable when she woke up than now. She should go to the hospital at this time, but her headache was severe again. The original owner, her parents, have long since given up. She usually has low self-esteem because of her obesity. She has been renting a house off campus for more than 3 years in college and has no friends. She has no relationship with her younger sister Chengbian. Being close, there is only one boyfriend, Jiang Sun, that she can rely on. In the plot, it was Jiang Sun who took Lily to the hospital after she had an accident. However, it was obvious that Lily could no longer rely on Jong-sun. She tentatively tried to stand up. Just taking a few steps forward, the world started to spin violently. When he moved again, he couldn't even lift his legs. It was too difficult to go to the hospital. Lily tried to stand up straight and made a movement to practice physical skills. The flexibility of her body was not very good, and her body was fat and fleshy, and she had been injured. She retched twice when she bent down, and she began to suffer a lot. However, she was slowly lifted up by her spiritual energy. Flowing into the body, the pain was slowly soothed. From the beginning, the pain made her whole body twitch involuntarily, but then the pain in her head gradually subsided. Lily gritted her teeth and did a few physical training movements, and a lot of cold sweat broke out all over her body. Finally, the pain was much better than at the beginning, and she crawled onto the bed trembling all over and fell asleep. The phone rang countless times that night. Lily didn't sleep well. She developed a high fever in the middle of the night. When she woke up in the morning, her eyes were covered with a sticky layer and she couldn't open them. Her mouth was swollen and her face was swollen. "It's so bad that I can't feel the pain now, only numbness and heat. My limbs are beginning to hurt, and it hurts to move my fingers. It just so happens that these days are holidays, and I don't have to go to school for the next few days." The reason why the original owner came home late yesterday was because Jong-sun's parents would come to the imperial capital during the long holiday. She and Jong-sun were discussing how to arrange their future parents-in-law. They were too excited to talk, so they delayed. It was too late. It was almost 1 o'clock in the morning when she left school. Cheng Bei never dreamed that she, who was not in good shape and appearance, would eventually encounter something like that would ruin her life. The mobile phone that was thrown at the foot of the bed has long been out of battery. No one except Jong-sun would call Cheng Bei on weekdays. Although the parents feel a little guilty about their daughter, they are actually more. What I care more about is the eloquent little daughter who has lived with them since she was a child. After Cheng Bei went to college, she moved out of home and rented a house here. Except for going home once a week, her parents rarely called her and there was nothing worth contacting. Man, Lily really didn't want to contact a scumbag like Jong-sun at this moment, so her phone naturally stopped charging. Fortunately, she didn't have to go to school these days and could recuperate at home. Lily dragged her aching body out of bed and cleaned herself up first. When she saw the bloody paper she put on the sink last night, Lily threw the tissue into the trash can without thinking. She originally saved this to find out who was the person who attacked her yesterday, but now that she knows the truth of the matter, it is no longer needed. She can scare people when she goes out like this, not to mention that her whole body hurts now, and she can barely walk around the house. Fortunately, Chen Lily was adopted by her parents when she was a child, and she grew up washing and cooking in the adoptive home. Learned good cooking skills, and she has the habit of cooking at home. In addition, Jong-sun said a few days ago that his parents would come to the imperial capital to play for a few days. In order to properly greet his future parents-in-law, Cheng Bei bought a lot of chicken, duck, and fish in the refrigerator. Lily doesn't have to go out these days. She hides at home every day to recuperate. In addition to applying trauma plasters and taking anti-inflammatory drugs, she also does physical exercises to induce spiritual power to warm up. The injured body healed much faster in this way. A lot of the swelling on her face had gone away in 2 days. Although she still looked frighteningly bruised, her head didn't hurt as much as before, and her ears were ringing. The sequelae such as dizziness, nausea, and vomiting have subsided a lot. The 7-day-long vacation passed quickly, and Bei could already get out of bed. There were classes on the first morning after the long vacation. Cheng Bei had poor grades in the past, but she had a very serious character, because she was almost stopped from going to school by her adoptive parents. She cherishes the hard-won opportunity she has now, so her classmates who are a few years behind her in college sometimes miss classes. She has never done that before. It is just because of her limited talent that no matter how hard she works, she can't compare to others. After Lily was healed and could get out of bed, she packed up early and got ready to go to school. The swelling on her face has gone away a lot in the past few days, but some bruises are still there. When Lily entered the school, she didn't know if it was because the original owner was fatter, but the bruises on her face were still there. It didn't attract anyone's attention, because this class was the first one in the morning, and there weren't many students in the class. There were only a few people sitting here and there in the classroom at Nottingham University. If they weren't lying on the table with their eyes closed and meditating, or just gathered around talking in twos and threes, Lily entered the classroom, chose a corner position that Lily would usually choose, and sat down quietly, took out her own books and placed them on the table. To be continued. Carrot. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 674. Chen Lily, what's the matter with you? There were still a few minutes left before class started. Another figure walked in at the door of the classroom. He looked straight towards the corner. After spotting Lily, the man clenched his fist. Rushed over with an angry face, one of his eyes was wrapped with gauze, the other eye also looked red, and his hand seemed to be injured, one palm was wrapped in gauze and hung on his chest. He rushed to Lily and shouted, "I called you 7 days ago and said I was injured. Why did you hang up on me?" Jong-sun looked angry. He pointed at Lily and asked. Seeing that she didn't speak, he became even more angry, "Aren't we boyfriend and girlfriend? I was in a car accident and wanted to borrow some money from you. Why did you didn't answer my call and hung up on me? Are you afraid that I won't call you back?" Jong-sun felt very aggrieved at this time. He was from the country. He had suffered enough when he was young, so he vowed that he would be a good man. He doesn't want to go back to his poor mountain village, but wants to stay in the prosperous city of the imperial capital. However, the imperial capital's household registration control is very strict now. In the future, unless he has the ability to buy a house in the imperial capital, he may one day become a real. The people of the imperial capital flew out of the poor mountain nest of their hometown. It's just that the housing prices in the imperial capital are changing day by day. Jong-sun himself has been a farmer for generations, and his parents have raised several children. In order to support Jong-sun in attending this aristocratic school in the imperial capital, Jong-sun passed the exam on his own merits. However, he also spent the last money of his family. During his college years, most of Jong-sun's thoughts were on how to stay in the imperial capital in the future. His studies were not very outstanding, and he saw that he was about to graduate. He hadn't found a stable job yet. He thought he could accumulate some connections by entering a noble school, so he applied here, but he didn't expect that the really rich people would look down on him at all. He had been marginalized for several years in college, and now that he was a senior, he had no choice but to set his sights on Cheng Bei-hee. Originally, Jong-sun looked down on Cheng Lily because she was so fat. His background was not good. His father was just a small businessman who opened a hardware store. He had neither good looks nor an outstanding family background. He didn't like Cheng Lily, but Cheng Lily had his favorite imperial household registration. As long as he was with Cheng Lily, marriage is in accordance with the regulations of the imperial capital. 5 years after the couple get married, he will become a permanent resident of the imperial capital, and then he will truly leave Kyangshan Valley. Cheng Bei-hee was so ugly that all her classmates looked down on her, but Jong-sun despised her but wanted to please her for the sake of the future, so there was no need to mention that feeling. He is influenced by his parents. The idea that men are heaven and women are earth is deep-rooted. Jong-sun originally thought that women should serve men as husbands and raise children, but now he wants to please Cheng Lily. You can imagine Jong-sun's feelings in his heart. He is afraid of himself in the future. If he marries a fat woman like Chang Bei-hee, he will still be looked down upon by his family. It's okay for a man to bow his head for a while, but he can't bear it if he bows his head for the rest of his life. He has put so much thought into it, not just to be a doorman in the imperial capital. Son-in-law makes his family laugh. He wanted to marry Chang Bei-hee in the future. He is also the real head of the family. In order to be superior in front of his married family, Jong-sun came up with a way. Although this era is progressing, women's status is also rising. But if a woman is raped and she remarries, she will be unable to hold her head high in front of her husband's family. If he really wants to trample Chen Lily under his feet, he can only destroy her chastity and then appear in front of her in an attitude of not despising her. From then on, Chen Lily loses her reputation and gets married. She had not been completely naked before, so what qualifications did she have to raise her head in front of him? From now on, he is the real head of the family in front of her. If this is the case, even if he marries such a fat woman, Jong-sun feels that it is not completely unbearable. He made up his mind and called his hometown a few days ago to invite his parents to visit the imperial capital, and told Cheng Lily the news. Sure enough, she excitedly decided where to take his parents to play, and coaxed her impatiently. 2 days later, Jong-sun deliberately took Chang Bei-hee for a walk on campus the night before the long vacation to discuss how to receive his parents this time. Chang Bei-hee didn't think much about it, and he dragged her until late at night. After they parted, Jong-sun waited for her to leave and then followed her back to the place where she rented a house. The place Chang Bei-hee rented was a few old undemolished houses in the imperial capital outside the campus. There were many elderly people living there. The old people slept late at night. Even if Cheng Lily called for help, these old people who had slept to death might not be able to hear it at all. He took off the light bulbs in the building in advance, and sure enough, he successfully dragged Cheng Lily to the stairwell while beating him. Inside. Having endured Cheng Lily, a fat woman, for a long time, Jong-sun already felt a little nauseous. He was afraid that Cheng Lily would quarrel, so he hit her with a fatal blow. When he was trying to hold back his nausea and prepare to get her, this woman went crazy and almost bit off the bones of his fingers, stabbed his eyeballs, and almost kicked out his lifeblood. Jong-sun was afraid that he was going blind at the time, so he hurried to the hospital. The doctor said that he was lucky to have arrived early, otherwise if his eyeballs were infected, the consequences would have been disastrous. He didn't have much money in his pocket at the time, and when he was about to call Cheng Bei-hee to come over and pay for his medical expenses, he didn't expect that Cheng Bei-hee, who had been so obedient to him in the past, didn't even answer his phone. Jong-sun had to pay for his living expenses. Fortunately, his parents arrived in the imperial capital later and brought some money with them. Otherwise, Jong-sun would have been hungry during the 7-day-long holiday. When he called Lily, she turned off her phone. He used the excuse that he had been in a car accident in the past 2 days. He originally wanted to wait for Lily to apologize to him and admit his mistake, but he didn't expect that Lily ignored him at all in the past few days, and something like this happened. Naturally, his parents were not able to have a good time, and none of the things he planned were done. Jong-sun was furious for no reason. He was going to come to school today to block Lily. Originally, he just wanted to come here and try his luck. After all, he hit Cheng Lily hard at that time, and he knew how strong his force was. When those punches hit Cheng Lily's head and face, he almost knocked her out of her life. He thought Lily would be recovering well at home, but he didn't expect to actually see her in the classroom when he came to the classroom. "I was in a car accident. Why didn't you answer my call?" "Look, my hand almost broke." When Jong-sun saw Lily, he couldn't help but frown in disgust. It was impossible to tell whether Lily's facial features were beautiful or not. She is too fat, not in good health, and her complexion is not good looking. She is not fat with a good complexion, but looks a little lifeless. She is obviously in her early 20s, but she looks like a middle-aged man in his 30s. Like a young woman, when he saw Lily's side face, Jong-sun subconsciously turned away. His expression was very ugly. One of his unbandaged eyeballs, which was slightly injured that day, was inflamed and red. He only used his eyes for a while. The tears were about to flow out involuntarily. Thinking of his injuries, Jong-sun clenched his fists again. "Speak, why are you silent?" He had been in the classroom for so long. Lily not only didn't say a word to him, but she didn't even turn to look at him. He didn't have time to dislike her for looking like this, but now the situation has changed, a fat and ugly bitch. Without saying a word, Bae raised her arms and stood up and slapped him in the face. There was a crisp sound. Jong-sun never thought that she might do it. Cheng Bae used to be too docile in front of him. Jong-sun never dreamed that she would slap him, and he was stunned for a moment. This body is not in good shape, and although Lily's injuries have healed, her muscles and bones are still painful. The slap did not hurt Jong-sun, but Lily's back suddenly broke out with a lot of sweat. "Come on," she endured her flustered feeling and shouted at Jong-sun. "Get away." There was a cold look in her eyes that were narrowed due to edema and weight gain. When Jong-sun saw this look, he shuddered all over. When he came to his senses, he realized that he had been beaten by a woman. He clenched his fists at once. Just thinking about his current situation and position, Jong-sun gritted his teeth and endured it. Even though he was gritting his teeth with hatred, he still endured his anger and forced out a smile. "What's wrong, Lily? Who messed with you? Why is your face so blue?" After saying this, Jong-sun gritted his teeth, his chest rose and fell violently, and his face looked quite ugly. "I just asked, you just said a few words. Why did you hit someone? Did something happen? I was in a car accident and you are my girlfriend. I am just a little angry that you didn't come to see me. Why did you lose your temper like this?" He hadn't hit anyone yet, but Lily did it first, and in front of so many people. Although the two of them were sitting in the corner, and they had always been invisible people in the class in the past, this move it still attracted the attention of many people in the classroom, and several people turned their heads and stared here. When his classmates saw him being beaten by a woman, Jong-sun's heart surged with anger. Lily looked down at his dark and thin face, and she also clenched her hands tightly, but this body was too strong. She was so weak that she was still a little flustered after having just slapped someone. Now it was obviously impossible to teach Jong-sun a lesson. Lily endured the boredom in her heart and sneered. "I'm in a bad mood and I lose my temper when I want to. Do you have any objections?" Jong-sun, a bitch, dared to pretend that nothing was wrong and appeared in front of her like a normal person. After knowing the truth, not only he saw the original owners, he looked disgusting, and Lily was even more disgusted to see him. If it weren't for the original owner's physical weakness, she couldn't teach him a lesson, otherwise she would have killed Jong-sun. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 675. Jong-sun was furious when he heard what she said. He narrowed his eyes dangerously, but this action made his injured eyes involuntarily burst into tears again. When Lily crossed his eyes, the original owner was seriously injured at the time. In addition, Cheng Bae was already weak, so the force was not too strong and failed to hurt his roots. However, because his eyes were a fragile place, he was still injured. Even if he went to the hospital every day to get medicine these days, but he was not completely healed yet. As soon as the tears came out, his eyes were burning and painful. Jong-sun cursed a few words in his heart and showed a gentle look on his face. "Who made you unhappy? Why did you lose your temper? Lily, what happened to your face? Are you injured?" Jong-sun guessed that Lily had a weird temper because of what happened that night. It's a pity that he didn't succeed, but now he wanted to ask about Lily in public. As long as she was willing to tell, it wouldn't matter if the two of them didn't really have a relationship by then. She still couldn't be cleansed by jumping into the Yellow River. Outsiders talk a lot about her, but as long as she doesn't dislike her and expresses her willingness to marry her, she will still be unable to hold her head high in front of him for the rest of her life because of this matter. My parents were talking about wanting to see their daughter-in-law 2 days ago, and you didn't answer the phone. What happened to your face? Did something happen? Lily, if something happens, you must not hide it from me. Tell me, I am your boyfriend, I will always stand by your side and share the burden for you. Jong-sun stretched out his unwrapped hand and wanted to grab Lily's arm. No matter what happens, we will work together. Is it okay to face it? Lily moved her palms, which were still numb, as she had just exerted too much force. At this time, one of her arms was so weak that she couldn't lift it up. Seeing Jong-sun's face that forced a smile, Lily's eyes darkened, and then she couldn't help but laugh again. I fell down while being chased by a dog. What did you think would happen to me? Hearing this, Jong-sun was stunned for a moment, his expression was a little distorted, and his volume increased a bit. I couldn't help but ask. Are you serious? Lily, what I asked is true. What happened to you? Don't hide anything from me. It's very wrong for you to do this. Can we face it together if we have something to do? After he said this, he said emphasized, no matter what happens, I will never dislike you. Dislike me? Lily narrowed her eyes. He looked coldly at Jong-sun several times. What are you using to dislike me? I think my sister is right. Look at yourself. If you have no looks, no figure, and even a poor family, I will, if I'm really with you, let people know that I have parents-in-law like your parents. Tell me where to put my face? Cheng Bei had never been pursued by anyone in the past. When Jong-sun was a little nicer to her, she wished she could tear her heart out. But in the end, she didn't expect that she would meet such a white-eyed wolf. She had been angry for half her life, and she died. Only then did she discover the truth of the matter. Lily could feel the anger in the original owner's stomach at this moment. She snorted coldly and raised her eyebrows. If you have something to face with me, you can take it out of your pocket. $500. Cheng Bei used to have a cowardly look on his face when he spoke and looked at people. When talking to people, he always talks softly and hums like a cat. Jong-sun originally wanted to pretend to be generous and tolerant, so that the hurt Lily would be moved to tell the whole story to achieve his goal. Unexpectedly, Lily was not only unmoved in the end, but instead ridiculed him. His face turned red, especially after Lily slapped him just now. It attracted the attention of several students in the class. At this moment, many people turned their heads. Lily did not lower her voice when she spoke. Jong-sun, who had always been good-looking, felt as if he was being stripped naked in front of everyone. He took off his clothes and laughed, feeling a sense of humiliation welling up in his heart. I can't help you when something happens, but you can talk a lot. I'm in a bad mood today. Sit farther away and don't come in front of me. Lily sat down again. Jong-sun always asked her to be patient when he was next to her. She couldn't help but have the urge to take out something and kill Jong-sun on the spot. Unfortunately, her body was too weak at the moment and she couldn't even teach Jong-sun a lesson like she had practiced in the previous mission. Neither has the strength. When the people sitting in their seats around heard this, they couldn't help but burst into laughter. Originally, Chen Lily was fat, ugly, and introverted, and was the most despised person in the class, but there was no such thing. Thinking that this girl, who was not very good in figure and appearance, began to dislike others, Jong-sun, the person disliked by Lily, was naturally even more ridiculed. Under such a look, the veins on Jong-sun's forehead jumped, and he was about to when he opened his mouth to speak again. The class bell rang. The elegant professor had already brought the materials into the classroom. Jong-sun's heart was filled with anger, but he had to grit his teeth to hold it back. Since Lily drove him away, it would be even more of a joke if he remained shameless at this moment. He couldn't keep his face, gritted his teeth and moved his position. Lily looked at his slightly hunched back, her eyes narrowed, and a fierce light flashed past. During a class, the professor on the stage was talking about modern history. Lily squinted her eyes slightly and sat on the chair to adjust the spiritual power in her body. This body should have left the root of the disease when it was in the mother's body. There are many problems in the body, and most of the muscles and veins are blocked. The same is true for the original cause of puffiness and obesity. If the human body's muscles and veins are connected through a large circulation, and some nutrients are absorbed into the body will be distributed in a balanced manner, forming an inherent health pattern. Chen Lily's body has blocked tendons and many problems. The things that the body should absorb everywhere in the blocked tendons are naturally not able to absorb them. It's like the places where nutrients should be received are not being received or should not be received. The place seemed to be overnourished, and the body had lost weight, but it was extremely weak inside. Ever since she received the mark given to her by Li Yangzi, Lily has not encountered someone so unsuitable for martial arts training in the mission for a long time. Fortunately, her current strength value has increased a lot compared to the original. In addition, I have been practicing physical skills recently, so now I have some spiritual power trapped in my body. Although it is very meager, but I can use this spiritual power to circulate in my body during class time. When the bell rings, Lily's body will still be full of energy. They all feel a lot more relaxed. As the students in the classroom left in twos and threes, Jong-sun, who was sitting not far away, stared at Lily with a gloomy face, neither leaving nor coming over. Obviously, what Lily said to him before class made him still at this moment. Zabuletinkuai now looked like he wanted to wait for Lily to go over and sue for peace. He had said several times in the past that he did not dislike Cheng Lily being fat and ugly. The original owner felt hurt and at the same time a little happy that he had found such a man who could see her inner self. Every time, Jong-sun's words were not taken to heart. Now, after Lily said a few words to him, he put on airs. Lily sneered and put away the books she spread on the table. She only had this class this morning, and she also had an elective class in the afternoon. Now it was still early, so Lily planned to go back to practice her physical skills first, and then come to school in the afternoon. As for Jong-sun, Lily hadn't figured out how to deal with him yet. Anyway, even if Jong-sun was scolded, she would never dare to speak lightly. So what if you break up and leave, ruining him? It won't take long for him to come back after ruining him. When he saw that Lily had packed up her things and left without hesitation, instead of coming to apologize to him, Jong-sun's fist that was originally placed on his thigh suddenly clenched. He couldn't help but scold Lily several times, then he stood up and hurriedly chased after her, but Lily was walking very fast. At this moment, many classmates could be seen standing in the corridor talking and chatting outside the classroom, but Lily was no longer visible. After getting rid of Jong-sun, Lily walked for 2/4 of an hour before arriving at the square at the entrance of the school. The front entrance of this aristocratic school in the imperial capital was very grand. At the entrance was a large fountain and rockery. Several vigorous and powerful words of the imperial capital aristocratic university were engraved on it. On the rockery, there is light music all around. The fountain in the Nanyo pool rises with the music, almost reaching the sky. When you walk to the square, you can feel the water of the fountain sprinkle like drizzle on people's faces. There were many round seats built around the flower beds around the square. At this time, many students were sitting on the chairs in twos and threes. When Lily passed by, many students did not raise their heads. There was soft music and fountains falling all around. In the rustling sound, Lily keenly felt that someone was looking towards her, and then she vaguely heard a girl saying, "Bien, look, your sister is here." She looked over from the corner of her eye and saw several girls wearing denim trousers and fitted t-shirts gathered in a group not far from the fountain. At this time, after someone reminded them, those girls all turned around. Turning over, one of the beautiful girls with big curly hair squinted her eyes, and there was a hint of displeasure in her tone. "What about my sister? She is just a parasite adopted by my parents. Look how she looks like me." "Looks like it?" Changbin has a slender figure and beautiful appearance, and with some dressing up, she looks really different from Changbei, who is so fat that her facial features are almost squeezed out of shape. As soon as she said these words, several girls went cheese. Then he laughed. "It's really not like that. I'm just kidding you. Why are you really angry?" Okay, don't be angry anymore. I'll tell you some news. Senior Luo is going to return to China soon." After hearing this, several other people gathered around Senior Luo started a heated discussion. When Lily passed by Changbin and the others, Changbin showed disgust on her face and turned her head away, as if she was afraid that Lily would greet her. He exchanged glances with the girls next to him, and they laughed again, and then talked about Senior Luo's return to China again. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 676. In Changbin's mind, the original owner was a thief who stole her parents' attention. In the past, when Changbin was given away to others, her parents only had her as a daughter. She enjoyed the love of her family, but after Changbei returned home, Cheng's father and Cheng's mother felt a little guilty for sending her away at the beginning, so although they were not very close to Changbei over the years, they were not bad. With Changbei's room in Cheng's home, Changbin felt as if it belonged to her. Changbin felt like her things had been divided, and she had always been very unhappy with Changbin. In addition, Changbei was not good looking and had poor academic performance, which made Changbin feel even more ashamed that she had such a sister. Generally speaking, Changbei never talks about their relationship to the outside world, but Changbei is completely opposite to her. She has always been proud of this sister. Every time she sees her, she will always come up to say hello excitedly, but every time she is ignored by Changbin. Unceremoniously slapped in the face in public. Changbin was different from Changbei's eagerness to please when she saw her. She felt that Cheng Lily was fat and ugly. Every time she talked to her, she was embarrassed. Generally, she could hide when she met Changbei. Hide. If you can't hide, just pretend not to see it. This time when Lily passed by Changbin and a few others, a girl sneered. "She's here." Several people lowered their heads and said quietly. However, Changbin was staring at Lily from the corner of his eye. Changbin frowned tightly, and the boredom in his eyes seemed to overflow from his eyes. When Lily saw her like this, she didn't avoid it in particular, but straightened her eyes. Walked past her. She didn't stop to call Changbin's name timidly like the previous owners, nor did she try to please her in a humble way. Changbin saw this scene. She was stunned for a moment, and the girls around her were also in a daze. It wasn't until Lily was almost out of the school gate security room that they realized what she was doing. Although Changbin hated Cheng Lily, when she saw Lily passing by her, she had already prepared to ignore her, but in the end, she ignored her at all. She was still a little angry. Several girls were still discussing in surprise whether Lily had taken the wrong medicine today. Changbin snorted coldly, pulled a few more people, and changed the topic back to Luo, who was discussed by them before. On the seniors. This school was originally a public school. The reason why it is now called an aristocratic school is because students who cannot meet the school's admission score can use the method of paying sponsorship fees to make up for the outstanding credits. When the new regulations began, there were so many children of powerful people in the school that later on in the school, except for a small number of students who were admitted based on their own ability, most of the people in the school were descendants of powerful people. Once there were more resources for such students, Many parents are willing to send their children to school in advance so that they can establish their own relationships early. Because of this, the school has always been known as an aristocratic school behind the scenes. After the principal was changed more than 10 years ago, the school name was simply changed to Noble School. Chenbian and others mentioned that Senior Luo Bei had vaguely heard this person's name in his memory. There are three types of middle school students in this university. One is those with good grades, which the school will charge extraordinarily, and the second is those with poor grades. A few points: those who cannot get into a really good school can only get in by paying extra money. The third type is the children of powerful families who send their children to school to build connections. The original Cheng Bei was the second type of person. The Senior Luo mentioned by Chenbian and others is not any of these three types of people. He is a person with good looks and good moral character. He was selected by the school as an exchange student in the UK when he was a sophomore student and went to England for further study for several years. Senior Luo has a high reputation on campus. Even though he has been abroad for many years, there are still many legends about him in the school. When Cheng Bei entered school, he had been abroad for several years and had never seen him in person. However, his name was still on many lists in the school and he was a very popular figure on campus. It's just that such a person has nothing to do with Lily, so she put the matter behind her after hearing it. After going home and practicing taijutsu once, Lily couldn't finish all the taijutsu exercises when she started to enter this body. The original owner's body was so poor that she could only perform taijutsu exercises up to the 20th. Today, Lily tried a lot. After doing 2 actions, she was already out of breath from exhaustion. Once these actions were completed, there were only 40 minutes left before the afternoon class. Although the house Cheng Bei rented was not far from the school, it was only the school gate. It took about half an hour to get to the elective classroom. Lily wiped her sweat, grabbed an apple and bag, and hurried out the door and ran towards the school. She stopped in front of a traffic light and waited for the green light for pedestrians to pass. After crossing the road and turning the corner, she could see the school's main entrance sign. Lily stood in front of the traffic light and waited for a long time, silently calculating in her heart. Counting the seconds, she was about to leave when she saw the green light on the opposite side. A black car came speeding towards her. When she saw the green light in front of her, the brakes sounded and the car suddenly stopped. Beside Lily, she was forced to retreat from the steps she was about to take forward. The window slowly lowered, revealing a handsome face. The driver was a young man who looked to be in his early 20s. His soft black hair hung down to cover his eyebrows, making him look quiet and peaceful. "Excuse me, how do I get to Taito University?" He didn't seem to be very good at dealing with people. He was a little cautious when he spoke. He pursed his lips with a serious expression. When he stared at people with his eyes, he gave people a kind of "it seems like he is only focused on your illusion in the whole world." Lily was startled by the speed of his driving. Cheng Lily's body was not flexible. If the car hadn't stopped in time, she would have been hit by the car. At this moment, she heard that the driver was just asking for directions. She frowned and first took out her phone to check the time. This young man has a handsome appearance, and his facial features are not extremely delicate, but when put together they are pleasing to the eye. The most important thing is that he has a special temperament. In this day and age, beautiful appearance and exquisite facial features can be fine-tuned with plastic surgery technology. In this era, he has such a refreshing and clean temperament that is simply amazing. It's just that Lily has experienced a lot in the mission and has seen a lot of different men. Although the young man's temperament made her take a second look, but after seeing the time on the phone, Lily decided, pretending not to hear the young man asking for directions. She twisted her bag and ran across the road quickly as time ran out at the traffic light. The young man looked at her running by with a dull expression. Lily's figure was reflected in his beautiful almond-like eyes. When he saw her figure running to the other side of the road, He pursed his lips and kept his gaze from she did not move away from the direction in which she disappeared. When the street light representing pedestrians changed from green to red, he quickly turned the steering wheel and followed Lily in the direction she had just run. This time, because Lily ran fast, the bell rang as soon as she entered the classroom. There are many people in this elective class. Most of the seats have been taken. There are only a few scattered seats left. The corners of the classroom have long been occupied by people who are getting ready to sleep. There is an empty seat in the second to last row. Jong Seon, whose hand was wrapped in a bandage, turned his head the moment Lily entered the classroom. He glanced at Lily and turned his face away. There was still room beside him. There are only 2 seats left, and the only one left is the one closest to the professor in the front row. Generally, most students don't like to sit in that seat. The closest to the professor, even deserting, there is no way. In the past, Changbei she doesn't sit in that seat either. It's not because she wants to desert her job, but because she doesn't look good. Although she has a serious personality, her talent is really poor. She is also a bit introverted and cowardly, so she usually chooses a corner seat to sit down. Lily came late today and there was no other place. She didn't want to sit next to Jong Seon. At this moment, Jong Seon was probably waiting for her to sit over. He didn't know what he was thinking about. Lily thought about carrying her bag and walked to the first row and sat down. She was originally sitting in the first row. As soon as people saw Lily sitting down, the male classmate next to him, whose hair was combed back with hairspray and dressed fashionably and flamboyantly, suddenly stood up in an exaggerated manner, dragged his chair and walked towards the back of the classroom. This move caused a lot of confusion. A group of people in the classroom burst into laughter, but Lily looked calm. Jong Seon, who was originally waiting for Lily to sit down, saw that she did not come to sit next to him. He cursed Lily a few times in his heart for being such an ugly woman. He clenched his fists and his expression changed instantly. It was very ugly. Before she had time to take out her materials before the professor came, there were already bursts of gasping sounds in the classroom. Lily did not turn around to look. In the empty seat next to her, there was a man in sky blue. The tall and thin figure in the white shirt sat down. Lily smelled a fresh scent of soap in her nose. Before she could turn her head to look, someone behind her seemed to stand up all of a sudden. She put out her things. Someone from behind pulled her hair, change position. Lily originally didn't want to sit in the first row. If the person behind her asked her to change seats, she might agree instead of pulling her hair. She turned her head to see the person sitting behind her. But the first thing she saw was a pair of beautiful almond-like eyes, staring directly at her at this moment. It was the young man with a special temperament who met on the road and asked where the Imperial University was. He was wearing a well-fitting blue suit on his upper body. He was wearing a white shirt with the beautiful crystal buttons buttoned neatly. It was obvious that his slender legs in black trousers could not be squeezed under the desk. The shirt showed off his slender waist and how much, judging from the curve, his bare palms on the cuffs of his blue shirt looked very white. At this time, the fingers of his hands were interlaced in front of his lower abdomen, and his expression looked a little reserved and serious. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 677. This was the car owner who she met at the traffic light before asking for directions. She didn't expect to meet him at school. Lily ignored him and ran away in a hurry. Now that they meet again, she doesn't feel the slightest sense of shame. Looking at the young man's black and white eyes, she looked back very calmly. Changbei's appearance was not good, and the car owner who asked for directions might have forgotten who she was. Change positions. The girl behind her who was pulling her hair couldn't help but patted Lily on the back again. When Lily turned away from staring at the young man and turned to the back seat, the thin young man in a blue shirt sitting next to him could see the faint figure. The eyebrows under the bangs wrinkled slightly. The girl who was talking about changing positions was staring at the young man's face and did not move away. The class was very quiet at this moment. Most people's eyes were on the young man, but he just turned around and stared. Lily saw that some people had looks of envy and jealousy on their faces when they saw him sitting against Lily. Lily was about to collect her things and stand up. Outside the classroom, an elderly professor wearing glasses came in with a laptop. After scanning the classroom, his eyes fell on Lily and the young man in the front seat. He took a quick look. When he saw the young man, his eyes widened in disbelief. He stretched out his hand to push up his glasses. "Luo-chi, why are you here? I heard someone in school a few days ago said you have returned to China." When she heard the name Luo-chi, Lily suddenly thought of Senior Luo, whom Chengbian and others mentioned in the morning, and finally understood why the young man attracted so much attention when he sat next to her. So many weird looks. In the past, Chengbei was very self-aware, and her past life experiences made her mature prematurely. She doesn't have the romantic feelings of ordinary girls. Luo-chi is a legendary figure that everyone talks about in school. Although she knows his name, she has never specifically searched for his name. She didn't ask about him like other girls in the school, because Chengbei never thought that something might happen between herself and a popular figure on campus, so when she saw the young man today, Lily couldn't recognize him. "Who comes?" He heard the old professor call his name. The young man's big black and white eyes blinked in confusion. His eyelashes were very long, and the shadows of his eyelashes seemed to be reflected in his clear pool-like eyes. He did not look away from Lily or look at the professor. But he called out the professor's identity very accurately and seriously, "Professor Liu." His voice was very soft when he spoke, and he stood up and gave him a slight salute. When he lowered his head, his eyes were still on Lily. Lily frowned at this. A smile appeared on the old professor's face. He was obviously not surprised by Luo-chi's character. Seeing outstanding students who had graduated long ago come back to attend classes obviously ignited the old professor's passion. He spent a whole section talking. The enthusiasm was surging. Someone in the class was secretly taking pictures behind Lily. Luo-chi, who was sitting next to her during class, could stare at Lily without blinking for a long time, which made her feel a little creepy. When the elective class ended, Lily stood up without hesitation. Before she left, Luo-chi's hand had already caught Lily's wrist. His fingertips were slender and his nails were oval and full. He looked as elegant as an artist's hands. The skin on the back of his hand was so good that it was almost invisible. Half a pore, holding Lily's hand at this moment, was set off by Cheng Lily's thick and strong wrist. His hand looked even more beautiful. He said nothing. Silently, she just pulled Lily. The moment she was pulled by him, Lily subconsciously reached out and shook the back of his hand away. The temperature of his palm was not high. At this moment, Lily's disgusting movements made his eyes look a bit hurt, and his pale pink lips pursed tightly. There was a childlike look of grievance on his face, and he stared at Lily without saying a word. His eyes were like those of a puppy, and his eyes were dark and bright, as if he could see the softest part of people's hearts, making people's expressions soften involuntarily. The classmates who had endured the entire class were swarming around. Luo-chi was a famous figure in this school. Even though he had been abroad for many years, there were still many legends about him on campus. Not only him, Pian has a clean and elegant demeanor, as well as his outstanding performance in school. Luo-chi has been abroad for several years and is a genius in cardiac surgery who has been retained abroad. His existence can be seen in many medical magazines. Over the years, some people have liked him very much. People have never heard of any scandals about him. Now someone actually sees this clean young man who is as clean as clouds in the sky and is not stained with dust. He reaches out and grabs Lily's hand. For a while, many people look at Lily. It was as if she was a pile of cow dung, soiling the flowers. Lily didn't notice the sarcastic looks of the people around her. She took advantage of Luochi being surrounded by people and cleverly got out of the crowd. Before she even took 2 steps, she was stopped by Jong-sun, who had a dark face. At this time, Jong-sun was like a cuckold husband, staring at Lily fiercely. "What do you mean?" As he said this, he stretched out his hand to grab Lily, dragging her out of the classroom. Jong-sun was furious at this time, and his strength was not small. Chen Lily's body was still weak. Although Lily struggled hard, she was still no match for Jong-sun's strength and was dragged out of the classroom by him. Jong-sun was so angry that he felt like his whole body was shaking. He didn't like Chen Lily. Chen Lily was neither beautiful nor in good shape. In fact, if she hadn't had a household registration in the imperial capital, he wouldn't have liked her at all. It would be shameless to bring a woman like Chen Beihe home, but in Jong-sun's heart, Chen Lily is already his own. He doesn't have to like it, he can be disgusted and bored, but one day he sees that what belongs to him is touched by others. At that time, he still couldn't help but feel a little angry in his heart. "Do you think anyone besides me will fall in love with you again? Save it, they may be trying to tease you. What happened to you? Why are you unwilling to treat me like I am your boyfriend? Let me be clear, I lost my temper and hit someone for no reason this morning. You don't like me because you like someone else." Jong-sun was so angry that his chest was burning, and he felt a sense of grievance in his heart that he couldn't vent. In his excitement, his originally injured eyes began to become congested and swollen again. The eyeballs were filled with red bloodshot eyes, and the tears couldn't help but flow out again. Everything has been going wrong for him recently, and he originally wanted to destroy Chen Lily before he deceived her. She quickly begged herself to get married and asked Cheng Jie to come up with more compensation plans for him. He had planned everything, and even specially asked his parents to come from the countryside for this matter, but he never expected it. In the end, things didn't go as smoothly as he imagined, not to mention that he was injured, and Chen Lily, who had always been meek and cowardly, actually dared to hit him. What kind of woman is hard to choose for a man like that? How could he like you? Lily, tell me what happened to you. Don't give up on yourself. Why are you so angry with me now? Shouldn't we face it together if something happens? Is someone bullying you? No matter what happens, I will never leave you, I will always be by your side. Suppressing the anger in his heart, Jong-sun repeated what he had said before, and finally said, "My parents are here and want to see you, please find a time to arrange it." Lily was grabbed by Jong-sun so hard that her wrist bone seemed to be broken by him. At this moment, she couldn't shake one hand away at all. When she heard Jong-sun's words, she looked at him looking impatient and holding back. He looked like he was about to lift the bag and hit him in the face. At some point, a tall and thin young man stood next to Jong-sun. At this moment, the slender palm was playing with a small scalpel. After twisting his fingertips twice, he suddenly raised the tip of the knife and pierced the back of Jong-sun's hand. Jong-sun didn't react at first. When the sharp scalpel easily cut open the flesh on the back of his hand, and blood gushed out, he felt the pain, and then he hurriedly removed the palm that was holding Lily. He let go. Fortunately, he let go quickly. At this moment, the back of his hand was only slightly scratched, or if he hesitated a little longer, the gleaming scalpel seemed to be able to peel off his bones and flesh. "You didn't wait for me." Luo Qi pursed his lips and drooped his eyelids. His tone was calm, but there was a sense of grievance for no reason. The capillary blood vessels inside the eyelids were almost transparent and white. Jong-sun's gasping sound was automatically blocked by his ears. He didn't even look at Jong-sun out of the corner of his eye. The eyes wrapped under his eyelids obviously turned around, and finally fell on Lily. Only the scalpel on the red and swollen wrist that had just been grabbed by Jong-sun was stained with blood. He took out the neatly folded square towel from the collar of his shirt and wiped it clean before putting it back with him. Carrying a small surgical kit. Chengbei. Jong-sun subconsciously wanted to reach out to stop the blood flowing on the back of his hand. He hurriedly shook off the hand that was wrapped and hung on his chest. The right hand that seemed to be tightly wrapped was suddenly thrown out of the gauze, and the back of his hand was held down. His palm was not injured, but the knuckle of his index finger still had the scars of his teeth. In some places, the scars had not completely faded away. Jong-sun had just pressed the scratch on the back of his hand anxiously, causing the wound that had not grown well to begin with. It cracked open, and a few drops of bright red blood came out of the scab. He gritted his teeth and shouted Lily's name. Lily rubbed her wrist and found that it was still a little weak. Then she changed her other hand and raised her hand to give Jong-sun a slap, but Luo-chi grabbed her. Before her palm touched Jong-sun's face, Lily gave Luo-chi a cold look, raised her leg and kicked Jong-sun again. This time Luo-chi didn't stop him. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 678. When that foot kicked Jong-sun's calf bone, Lily herself felt a dull pain in her toes under the black leather shoes. This kick was no easier for Jong-sun than the slap he received from Lily in the morning. It hurt even more. He gritted his teeth. When Luo-chi's name was called out by the professor, he already knew Luo-chi's identity, so naturally he couldn't offend him now. He is just a child from a poor mountainous area. Luo-chi has a high reputation in the school. Although he took a scalpel and stabbed the back of his hand, if Jong-sun dares to fight back, from now on Luo-chi's admirers in this school will squeeze him out until he can't stay any longer. What's more, Luo-chi's identity is something he can't offend. The only one he can offend is Lily. Jong-sun doesn't believe that Lily said she loved him a few days ago, but now she doesn't love him anymore. It must be seeing that Luo-chi had spoken to her now. She thought she could climb a high branch, so she had some thoughts that she shouldn't have. Although Jong-sun was very unhappy when he thought about this idea he had guessed. After all, Chengbei used to be his exclusive item, but now he has some strange thoughts, but he believed that Luo-chi would not be attracted to Lily, who is so fat and boring. Woman, so Lily will come back to him one day. Who else will want her besides himself? She doesn't admit her mistake at the moment, but there will be more opportunities for her to admit her mistake in the future. If you regret it later, don't come to me. I've seen you clearly. Thinking of this, Jong-sun endured the anger in his heart and said a harsh word. The back of his hand still hurt. He had no extra money in his hand. I went to the hospital to get stitches. Although the wound was a bit bruised, fortunately it was not big. It will probably heal in a few days, but thinking that he can't swallow this breath, and will only have to wait for Lily to beg him for forgiveness in the future, it will happen to her again, Jong-sun snorted coldly. Covering his hands, he endured the pain in his legs and turned around and left without hesitation. As soon as Jong-sun left, Lily wanted to shake Luo-chi's hand away from her wrist. A crowd of people were already gathering in the classroom corridor not far away. Seeing the scene here, many people couldn't help but whisper. Lily occasionally heard a few adjectives such as fat person and fat sister, and her brows furrowed. Lily's body was not beautiful and ugly at first. She didn't care, after all, for Lily, this was just an ill-fitting dress at most, but now she stood in front of the tall and thin Luo-chi, and she looked even more bloated. Lily didn't care about her appearance, but hearing these whispers still couldn't make her happy. Is something wrong? I don't know if it was because Luo-chi ignored him when he asked for directions, but now he was staring at her intently. Lily wanted to pull her wrist back, but Luo-chi held it seriously. Her arm, can't move, it's injured. He didn't seem to talk to people often. He only said a few words at this moment. There was some silence again. He carefully took Lily's hand and motioned her to put the hand that had just been injured by Jong-sun into the pocket of her clothes, as if it was fixed like this and would not move, and then a look of relief appeared on his face. The look in his tone, when Lily's eyes fell on his face, he curved the corners of his mouth and showed a smile. That smile was very pure, with an infectious power of purity, until Lily reacted. The cold look on her face had melted a bit. Subconsciously, she smiled at Luochi. She had already been pulled several steps away by Luochi. He didn't want to touch her wrist that had just been scratched, so he stood quietly beside her, watching Lily holding a bag with information in one hand. His fingers moved and his eyelids drooped again. The thick eyelashes blocked the eyes that were as clear as a stream, the lips were pursed tightly, and a hint of melancholy slowly emerged from the delicate and clean eyebrows. Lily remembered that he drove when he entered the school. It seemed that he was not close to her. She could have walked the same way as others. After leaving the campus, he should have driven away. Unexpectedly, she had already passed the traffic light. Seeing her rented house from a distance, Luochi followed her meekly. "Mr. Luo, are you okay?" Many people around looked at the strange pairing of the two and cast surprised glances from a distance. Lily couldn't help but ask. Luochi seemed not to have thought that she could speak. He raised his head in a daze, and after a long while he seemed to realize that Mr. Luo, she said, was calling him. He shook his head silently, his bright eyes not looking at Lily, as if he was starting to feel dazed. She couldn't help but sigh. Seeing his appearance, Lily turned around and walked towards home. Luochi, who had been stunned just now, saw her move, but he followed her again. It was still early at this time, and many old people downstairs from the old residence were sitting in the leisure area playing. When Lily came back with Luochi, someone couldn't help but curiously asked, "Daughter, is this your partner? What does he look like? He's so handsome." When others asked, Luochi just stared at Lily without making a sound. Seeing such a scene, the people around him couldn't help but get even more misunderstood. Chengbei, he has rented this place for almost 4 years. She has been living here since she was in college. Many old neighbors know her. The original owner and Jong-sun have been dating for several months, but Jong-sun has never been here. Here, he seemed to find it embarrassing to be with Cheng Lily. Except for the occasional secret date when no one was around, they spent most of the time in contact with Cheng Lily via mobile phone. He had never been to Cheng Lily once, so the old neighbor here didn't know that the original owner had dated Jong-sun, and it was obviously a misunderstanding. After explaining a few words that Luochi was not her boyfriend, he looked silent and looked like a wooden man. When Lily went upstairs to get the key to unlock the door, he also stood beside him obediently. Seeing him like this, Lily couldn't help it anymore, frowned and ordered, "Just stand there and don't come in again." As she spoke, Luochi's expressionless face suddenly moved. He raised his drooped eyelids and stared at Lily seriously for a long time, then nodded and gently said, "Okay." His back was straight, his hands were placed neatly on both sides of his thighs, and his eyes kept falling on Lily. Until Lily entered the door and closed the door, he kept staring at the door, and gradually his eyes became a little blurry. After walking all the way, Lily was covered in sweat. She was so flustered that she locked Luochi outside the door. Lily quickly forgot about this person. The most important thing at the moment was to nurse Cheng Lily's body back to health. If her body is a little better. When Jong-sun dared to drag her out of the classroom today, she was able to teach Jong-sun a lesson. She still couldn't finish the whole set of physical training moves. Lily did another move that she could do now. "I was sweating profusely from practicing, and it was getting dark outside now." Just immersed in the feeling of being enveloped by spiritual power, Lily did not turn on the light. Now it was dark all around. She felt much better. She walked to the wall next to the door and turned on the light. Somehow, Lily, she thought of Luoqi, who came back with her in the afternoon. It was already past 3 o'clock when she finished her afternoon class. After returning home, due to the poor health of the original owner, it took more time to practice physical skills. Even if there were only more than 20 actions performed, but it was already more than 4 hours later, and Luoqi should have left. But Lily couldn't help but pull the door open. With the fluorescent lights spilling out of the room, Lily saw a tall and thin figure still standing there in the dim corridor, still maintaining the same posture as when she entered the door in the afternoon. His hands were placed neatly by his sides, and his eyes were still staring in the direction of her door. When he saw her leaning out her body, the expressionless Luoqi smiled at her. "Why are you still here?" Originally, she just wanted to see if he had left. Unexpectedly, after opening the door, she could see Luoqi appearing outside the door. Lily was surprised. Luoqi was staring at him seriously. Eyes in one direction followed Lily's appearance and spoke, and the focus slowly fell back on her. "You said it," he said a few words, but Lily seemed a little confused, so he reluctantly added a few more words to explain. "Stand there and don't come in again." Lily thought of the 2 words she said when she went home to warn Luoqi not to follow her into the house again. It was obvious that Luoqi really listened to what she said. He did not follow her into the house, but he also didn't leave. "Then how many hours have you been standing here?" "I have met many people of all kinds during the mission." Lily rarely encounters people like Luoqi who are down to earth. She didn't expect what she said casually. He carried it out as an order for so long. Lily was a little dumbfounded. "If I don't come out, don't you have to stand until tomorrow morning?" As soon as she finished speaking, Luoqi did not make a sound, but the silent expression on his face showed that Lily was not afraid of meeting a scoundrel like Jong Seon, because she had many ways to be more scoundrel than Jong Seon. But when she saw Luoqi's appearance, Lily couldn't help but frown and said, "You go first, come." She remembered that Senior Luo, who was popular among thousands of boys and girls on campus, was not a retarded person. There must be some reason why he was pestering her now. She motioned Luoqi to come in first, and then see if she could find someone to pick him up. "Leave, forget it if you don't know that he is standing outside the door. Now that you know it, Lily has to invite him into the house first. Luoqi will stand outside the door for several hours just because of her words. Even if he entered the house, he wouldn't be able to do anything to her. She didn't have any beauty or extra money, not to mention that Luoqi didn't seem to need these. If he had evil intentions towards her, he could have taken action in the afternoon, but he didn't. Instead, he stayed at the door obediently. Outside. Besides, for a young man with such clean eyes, his eyes are as pure as 2 clear pools of water. No matter how bad a person like this is, there is only so much he can do. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan ERWR. Chapter 679. Luoqi's body had been bitten by mosquitoes, and there were several red spots on his fair and transparent skin, but he could resist not to scratch it. Lily let him into the house and closed the door smoothly. Pointing, she pulled out a chair for him to sit down and motioned for him to take out the things he was carrying. Luoqi obeyed her instructions every time. He took out a set of small surgical tools, but nothing else. He didn't even have a mobile phone with him. When Lily asked him where his home was and asked him to go back, he looked like he was stunned. When asked for his home phone number, his eyes wandered, his lips tightened, and he was speechless. After asking for a long time, nothing came out. Luoqi was as quiet as a beautiful glazed doll. When he looked at you quietly, it seemed that you were the only one in his eyes. It seems to be a world of its own that no one else can enter. It was getting late, and there was food at home, but before Lily had time to cook or ask where Luoqi's home was, Lily had already ushered him in. She took an apple and handed it to Luoqi. "You eat to fill your stomach. After you are full, think about where your home is and then leave quickly. Hearing Lily's words, Luoqi was just stunned, and then silently took out the scalpel from the small surgical bag he carried with him. He took out a tissue as if he had an obsessive-compulsive disorder and kept wiping his scalp back and forth. It was as clean and smooth as a scalpel that could be used as a mirror. The blade reflected his quiet and delicate face. Lily glanced at him at first and ignored him. She just watched him repeat the previous actions after wiping for several minutes, which made her feel a little confused. Can't help it anymore. The knife is already very clean, she reminded, and Luoqi seemed to have come back to his senses. His lips were pursed tightly, and there was a somewhat irritated look on his face. He looked at the large amount of tissues he had pulled out, and put the clean scalpel in his hand back into the sheath. He folded the used facial tissues he had just put aside and stacked them neatly together. Finally, he seemed relieved, took out the paper again, wiped the knife, folded the paper and placed it next to the waste paper pile. Then he concentrated on peeling the apple. He seemed to have calmed down now, and his expression looked very focused. The apple peels were spinning in his hands. The peels he peeled off were of the same width and even thickness. They looked like the result of mechanical production. A whole apple was completely peeled, leaving only some skin left in the middle of the upper and lower ends for his fingers to pinch. He looked up at Lily and said, "Wash your hands." Lily pointed in the direction of the kitchen. He thanked him politely and went in with the apples with his knife. When he came out, the apples had been divided into small pieces and placed on the plate, with a few thin strands on top. Bamboo sticks, he brought the plate to Lily and sat down again. After putting the scalpel away, he became silent and dazed again. She originally handed him the apple to eat, but she didn't expect that he would peel it and hand it to her in the end. Lily frowned. At this moment, she could already tell that this Luoqi was a little weird. First of all, he was very quiet. When talking to him, he could stay alone and quietly in a daze for a long time. Lily was used to staying alone, and this house was not big. Whatever she does by herself is just right. Suddenly there was one more person, and she was not used to it when she was practicing scene chen and physical skills. She wanted Luoqi to go home, but she just asked him where his home was and didn't say anything. When I asked him his home phone number, he didn't mention it. If he wanted to stay in silence like this right now, he wouldn't mention it. He can be quiet for a long time, which can be seen from the fact that he stood alone for several hours in the afternoon. This person is very patient. Although Lily is also very patient, sitting down with him like this is not an option. He reached for a bamboo stick and forked the apple to eat. Lily asked him to talk. "Where did you find the bamboo stick at home?" Luoqi, who was sitting in the chair, raised his head when he heard this. He sat in a very regular posture and his back was straight. He did not relax at all just because he was silent. Even if such a person has obsessive-compulsive disorder, he has to be self-disciplined. His sexual and self-control abilities are also amazing. After all, if you sit in the same position for a long time, a normal person would be tempted to change positions, but he didn't move. He looked like a still painting of a handsome man, which was pleasing to the eye. "It's cut with chopsticks." This time he answered all questions, but fell silent again after saying this. Lily forked 2 pieces of apples. "It's getting late, so your family won't worry if you don't go back so late. I'll call a car for you to take you to school." Lily motioned him to stand up, and he stood up obediently. He couldn't help but reach out and stroke the few creases that had just appeared on the hem of his shirt due to the curvature of his body when he sat down. It was not until he flattened the shallow mark that he glanced at Lily. No, after saying this, Luoqi's eyes showed disappointment again. "I live alone." The soft bangs hung down on his forehead, casting shadows. His expression gradually showed a bit of irritability, his lips pursed tightly, and finally he looked down, and the thick and long eyelashes like a fan covered the eyes. Thoughts got in the way. This look was like that of a wounded animal, which made people feel a little soft-hearted involuntarily, but Lily pointed at the things he had just taken out and put on the table, and he silently put them away again, watching him put things away neatly. Then Lily walked to the door and opened it. Luo Qi seemed to understand what she meant and went out obediently. As soon as he went out, Lily smiled at him, "Goodbye." He gave a clean smile and replied seriously, "Goodbye." When the door closed, Lily could see that the light in his clear eyes was gradually blocked by the door panel. She entered this world to complete a mission, not to find a man. She quickly forgot about Luo Qi. It was getting late now. Lily took out the meat from the refrigerator to thaw and cook the rice. When she was done frying the vegetables and serving them to the table, she suddenly, he thought of Luo Qi, who had just been kicked out by him. He should have left by now. He did not let him stay outside anymore, and said goodbye to him. If he was sensible, he should have left, but something went wrong. Lily opening the door again, Luo Qi was still standing at the door, maintaining the same demeanor as when he just said goodbye to her. When he saw Lily coming out, he smiled at Lily. Cheng Bei's body is neither beautiful nor attractive, and there is nothing outstanding about it that deserves attention. However, Luo Qi stood at the door and did not leave at all. It was estimated that if she continued to close the door, he might stand outside the door all night. Lily's face looked a little ugly. "You come in first." This time he was obedient and followed the instructions at the same time. He obediently entered the house. The smell of food wafted out from the house. Lily motioned him to wash his hands first. He was holding the rice bowl and his face was already red with many bites. The pimples were there, and the red pimples on his cheeks that were so white that they were almost transparent were particularly dazzling. It was getting late now. I didn't know where Luo Qi lived. Even if I wanted to send him back, there was nothing I could do. If I sent him when he goes to the police station, a famous person like him will bring him trouble. Lily is going to temporarily take him in for one night and wait until he goes to school tomorrow to find out where Luo Qi lives before letting him leave. When taking a bath at night, Lily found the original owner's clothes and handed them to Luo Qi. Cheng Lily was very fat, and Luo Qi's waist and hips became more and more slim when he wore them. His washed hair stuck to his head, so Lily handed it to him. The hair dryer was given to him, and he obediently dried his hair. During the day, his bangs hung down to block the center of his forehead and eyebrows. Now when he was blowing his hair, Lily saw his face. He was very delicate, with eyebrows like distant mountains and a full forehead and center. It's not an appearance that is stunning at first glance, but it becomes more and more pleasing to the eye the more you look at it. It's just that the fair face is now covered with traces of mosquito bites, as if it destroyed a delicate picture. Lily couldn't bear it. He endured it, brought out the medicinal oil from the house, and applied it on him. He didn't struggle, and just let Lily move obediently. Most of his face was blurred until he looked like a human being, and then Lily couldn't bear to laugh. Told him to sleep on the sofa that night, and after making sure he nodded, he returned to the room. Although Luo Qi behaved meekly, and there was really no beauty in his body, Lily still locked the door when she returned to the room, practiced the star training again, and tried more. After doing 2 actions and struggling for a long time, Lily wiped the sweat off her body, changed her clothes and fell on the bed to sleep. When she opened her eyes in the morning, she woke up being held in someone's arms. Warm breath blew softly in her ears. Lily turned her head subconsciously. Luo Qi's face was originally leaning on her neck. Finally, he was awakened by the movement of her turning her head. He blinked his eyelashes and slowly opened his eyes, as if his sleepiness had not completely faded away. He opened his mouth and yawned slightly. "Good morning." Lily's surprise was no small matter. After many missions, she had developed a strong sense of vigilance. Logically speaking, she should be able to feel the slightest disturbance, but she had no idea when Luo Qi came in, and this time she slept very deeply, and the curtains were not fully closed. The sun was streaming in through the window. It must have been getting late. How could she wake up at this time? Luo Qi still smelled of the soap from last night's bath, which smelled very good. His warm chest was close to her back, and even Lily could hear the sound of his heartbeat. His arm rested on her side. With a waist that was not slender, one hand was still under her neck, holding her in his arms as if it was natural. He had locked the door yesterday, so Lily had no memory of when he came in. Suppressing the suspicion in her heart, Lily pushed him and sat up. Luo Qi meekly allowed her to push him away. The clothes on both of them were wrinkled from sleep, but the buttons were still fastened. Lily couldn't bear the dissatisfaction in her heart. Happy, I picked up the phone beside the bed and took a look. Sure enough, it was getting late now. It showed that it was 10:30 in the morning and the first class had already passed. To be continued. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Juan Erwr. Chapter 680. Your angry Luo Qi frowned when he saw her like this. After sleeping all night, his hair was not very messy, and it was still so soft that it made people jealous. There was a confused look on his face, as if he didn't understand. Why would Lily be unhappy? Lily had taken the comb from the drawer of the bedside table to comb her hair. When she heard Luo Qi's words, she turned to look at him. He now raised his upper body and Chen Lily's loose clothes were put on him. It didn't fit the body properly. His movement at this time allowed the neckline to slide towards his shoulders, exposing his delicate collarbone. Seeing his appearance, Lily quickly tied up her hair and took a comb to comb his head a few times. He lowered his head obediently and allowed Lily to move. Without hearing Lily's answer, he asked again. Why? You shouldn't be here. His hair was as smooth as silk, dark and shiny. As soon as the comb touched his hair, it slid down, just like the effect in a shampoo commercial. Lily combed it twice for him. He gradually became a little more awake from the sleepiness at the beginning. After hearing Lily's words, Luo Qi was silent for a long time and did not speak. You should go back now. Repeating what she said to him several times last night, Lily picked up her phone and took another look. She remembered that she had classes in the afternoon, and her morning class was now. It had already passed. Since she didn't go to the first class, Lily wasn't going to go to the second class either. She planned to stay at home and complete all the movements of Sein Chen Taijutsu. Recently, the number of movements she can do has gradually increased. When all the movements are completed, the effect of practicing physical skills will be better than now. She urged Luo Qi. Luo Qi was silent for a while before sitting up, obediently opening the door and going out. When Lily changed her clothes and went out, he had already put on the clothes he wore yesterday. He gently said goodbye to Lily, but Lily ignored him. It wasn't until she couldn't bear his fixed gaze that she replied, "Goodbye." Luo Qi heard her answer. As if he was relieved, he looked at her again, then turned around and went out. When the sound of closing the door sounded, Lily thought of his disappointed face just now, and felt a little worried. It wasn't until she opened the door after making breakfast and went out to see that Luo Qi was gone outside the door that she breathed a sigh of relief. Arrive at school in the afternoon. As soon as she entered the campus, many people looked at her. Luo Qi was quite famous in this university. The news that Luo Qi left with her yesterday had already spread throughout the school. In the classroom, many people looked at her when Lily sat down where she used to like to sit. Different from the previous situation where no one paid attention to her, a group of people crowded towards her, and a girl with straight black hair asked, "What is your relationship with Senior Luo? Luo Qi's family background is outstanding." Even among the many people in this school who come from a wealthy family, he is considered one of the top ones. He is outstanding in academics and has now become a hot surgical operation abroad. Doctor, the reason why he returned to the university after returning from abroad this time was to work part-time at the school for a month. Many people in the school are his fans. Even some people who have graduated know that he will return to school to give lectures for a month. They all return to school to attend, which shows how popular Luo-Chi is. But such a popular person left with Lily yesterday, which made many people feel a little unhappy. In the past, Luo-Chi was clean and no one dared to think about him and tarnish him. This time, no one else took notice, but a fat girl grabbed her hand directly. Many people couldn't swallow this breath. They were curious about the relationship between Lily and Luo-Chi, and hated her for holding Luo-Chi's hand. At this time, looking at Lily's bloated figure, many people became more and more unconvinced and asked the girl who spoke looked bored. Lily glanced at her and asked calmly, "What does it have to do with you?" She said that the two of them had nothing to do with each other, and it was impossible to believe it by looking at the expressions of these people. As soon as Lily said this, the girl took a breath, and there were people beside her who couldn't help it. At this moment, he could not help but sneer in a low voice. "It's none of our business. How could Senior Luo fall in love with you? If you look like this, someone would have taken action long ago." "Someone still wants it, doesn't it mean she was raped?" someone answered. Many people pursed their lips, exchanged tacit glances, and stopped talking. In the plot, after Cheng Bei was raped by Jiang Xuan, there were rumors in the school for a period of time. Cheng Bei herself was physically injured. In addition, everyone in the school laughed at her behind her back, which caused her mental and physical shock. In the end she couldn't help but drop out of school and hastily marry Jiang Xuan. Lily entered the task at just the right time and didn't really let Jiang Xuan succeed. However, the same rumors were still spreading in the school. Her eyes suddenly turned cold. He stopped, stared at the girl who just spoke, and asked slowly, "Say what you just said again." She didn't feel the embarrassment and fear she felt after someone revealed her secret, nor did she feel the panic and anger the original owner had when someone criticized her. She just looked at the girl calmly, the girl who was still grinning. He felt a little embarrassed all of a sudden. "I also heard what others said, saying that you were raped by someone, but it wasn't me who said that. I don't care if you said it or not, but I only heard what you said. If I hear someone say it again in the future, I will only recognize you." Apart from herself and Jiang Xuan knowing what happened to Cheng Bei, in addition, no one else knew that she was not like the original protagonist in the plot. The bruise on her face had not faded after going to school. At that time, Cheng Bei was raped by Jiang Xuan and beaten badly by him. After the accident, she didn't dare to go to the hospital, so she hid and cried alone. After the long vacation, the injuries on her face didn't heal as well as they did now. She was naturally very conspicuous when others saw her, so some rumors spread in the school. However, after Bei entered the mission, she adjusted her body using physical training to attract spiritual power. She resisted and injured Jiang Xuan, so the damage she received was not as severe as Cheng Bei in the plot. After the break, there were still some bruises on her face. But the swelling on his face has almost subsided, and there is no clue at all at this moment, but such remarks are still coming out. It is naturally self-evident who is causing trouble behind his back. Lily glanced at this group of people, and everyone felt a little guilty when she saw them. The girl who said she was raped had a look on her face, curled her lips and said, "It's boring, and it's none of my business." As he said that, he pulled the people around him and left. Someone touched such a soft nail. Although the remaining people were still curious about the relationship between Luo-Chi and Lily, they all retreated in twos and threes because Lily didn't know how to talk. Opened. Jiang Xuan did not show up for this class. People around him turned their heads to stare at Lily from time to time, but Lily stared at the books and ignored them. After class, she packed up her things and left, not letting these people come around and ask questions. Chance. When she returned home, there was Luo Qi, who had only said goodbye to her in the morning, standing in front of her door in a different outfit. He was carrying a small silver metal box and a simple combination of white shirt and black trousers. Just looking at his back gave off a fresh and indifferent feeling. When he heard Lily's heavy footsteps going upstairs, he turned his head. As soon as Lily saw him, she couldn't help but sigh. "Why are you here again?" "I said goodbye," he replied. In Luo Qi's understanding, the word goodbye cannot be said casually. He is very cautious about the people he says goodbye to, and he cannot talk to others like ordinary people. The gift politely said the words goodbye. If it was someone he didn't want to see again, no matter how others said goodbye to him, he would never say those two words. When he said goodbye this morning, it was to say goodbye again. The meaning of meeting Lily, these two words were already regarded as a small agreement in his mind. When he heard Lily's question, Luo Qi frowned in confusion, but because the target was Lily, he patiently Xingzi explained. Lily somehow felt like she would never be able to get rid of Luo Qi's entanglement in the future. Seeing that he was holding a small box in his hand, although it looked like he couldn't hold anything in it, he seemed to plan to stay there for a long time. Lily didn't. After taking the key, she called the police first to ask the police to take the person away. She opened the door. Because she did not invite Luo Qi, he even stood obediently at the door with the box in hand and did not come in. This person looked elegant and behaved the same way. There are rules and regulations. If it weren't for her persistence, it would be difficult for Lily to feel bad about such a person. After walking for a long time, she was covered in sweat, her clothes were clinging to her body, she was flustered and her mouth was very dry. Just after pouring the water, before he could drink it, Luo Qi, who was standing at the door, said, "You can't drink water now. You just walked back, and your heart beats at more than 130 beats per minute, and your body temperature has risen. You can't drink cold water, as it will damage your intestines and stomach. You should use warm salt water to represent the electrolytes in your body." When he talked about things in his major, he rarely said more than a few words. Lily didn't understand electrolytes at all. She just put down the cup, and before she had time to talk to Luo Qi, there were a few sets of footsteps downstairs. It was the police patrolling nearby who came. After receiving the alarm call, 2 policemen came over quickly because they were patrolling nearby. Seeing the police coming, Lily endured her panic and pointed at Luo Qi and told her what happened. When Luo Qi listened to her words, he stared at her without refuting or explaining. She originally hoped that the 2 policemen would take Luo Qi away. Take him away, but they didn't expect that the 2 policemen shook their heads impatiently after listening to Lily's words. They didn't believe that Luo Qi would pester Lily, unless the two had a quarrel as a couple. Luo Qi had a long hair. With a clean and delicate face, the overall temperament does not look like that of a nightclub. On the contrary, Cheng Beihe's appearance is more questionable in comparison. With an expression of "I don't know how to be blessed when I am in the midst of blessings," I warned Lily not to worry about personal matters. After wasting police resources because of their relationship, the 2 policemen left as quickly as they came. When the 2 men left, Lily couldn't help but smile bitterly and motioned for Luo Qi to come in first. To be continued. Cannon Fodder Strategy. Author, Wan Erwr. Chapter 681. Because the police came just now, many people were standing on the stairs watching. Even the neighbors opposite opened the door and looked over. Not wanting to act in front of everyone, Lily let Luo Qi enter the house first. Then his face darkened. Luo Qi brought his surgical tools and some small instruments. He only brought 2 sets of clothes in the small suitcase, but he planned to stay there for a long time. He had nothing worthy of his plans. Lily glanced at his things, and entered the room minding her own business without speaking to Luo-Chi. The feeling of having one more person at home is no different from when Lily is alone. Luo-Chi is quiet most of the time. To Lily's surprise, he can cook, and almost all the meals he cooks are to her taste. He will be there when she is alone. When Lily didn't want him to disturb her, she would sit quietly in the living room in a daze. Except for the fact that he would appear in Lily's room every morning when she woke up, having Luo-Chi there felt like having a snail girl. Luo-Chi stayed here for 7 or 8 days in a row. He was very quiet and didn't talk too much. Sometimes he was even so quiet that people subconsciously ignored him. When Lily went out to class, he would occasionally, after going out, he took over a professor's job at the university for 2 months. He didn't have much time in class, and most of his free time was very leisurely. Apart from being in a daze, he would take out a brain model he carried with him, which was covered with the small pieces of nervous tissue in the brain, as well as the large and small brains. Brainstems and other distributions in the brain were cut into pieces about the size of a small fingernail. When scattered in the box, there were probably nearly 10,000 pieces at a glance. He didn't want to be in a daze. These things will be taken out from time to time, like a puzzle. Putting every little piece together, he had already finished most of it in the past few days. If it weren't for the fact that he wakes up in his room every morning, Lily would think that he is a very qualified roommate, quiet and obedient. As if affected by Luo-Chi's quietness, Lily slept very sweetly every night after practicing physical training, and her sleep quality was much better. In addition, she had been practicing physical training all these days to use her spiritual power. Take care of your body. So her complexion looks much better, and the most important thing is that Lily has lost weight. The reason why Chen Lily is obese is because the root of the disease accumulated when she was in her mother's womb. Her muscles and veins were blocked, resulting in overnutrition in certain parts of the body. She was deficient on the outside and weak on the inside. It would be difficult for ordinary people to improve this situation. But it is not difficult for Lily. These days, she mainly practices physical training to draw spiritual power into the body and unblock the muscles and veins. After practicing for more than half a month, Lily has almost finished the physical training movements. These days, her body has, once the blocked tendons are cleared and the accumulated nutrients are evenly absorbed by the body, the meat will naturally not grow in just one place. The body naturally loses weight, and it is not as difficult as it was at the beginning for Lily to perform physical training movements. As her body loses weight and her flexibility increases, she can gradually do better in some areas that she could not do well. And with the cooperation of this way, her effect progressed even faster. Although she was still fat compared to people with normal body shapes, Lily was almost a full circle thinner than her previous one. And because she used spiritual power to adjust her body, plus the physical training she practiced every day. Therefore, when I lose weight, my skin looks much better than before. Her complexion slowly adjusted back, but the classmates in the class did not notice Lily's change. She would come to school every day except weekends, for those who often saw her in the class. Except for Jang Soon, no one noticed the fact that she lost weight quickly. The wounds on Jang Soon's eyes and hands caused by Luo-Chi have long since healed. His original plan failed, and he thought that Lily was pursuing Luo-Chi on his own initiative. Originally, Jang Soon thought that Luo-Chi could fall in love with such an ugly woman like Lily. He was still waiting for Lily to come back to him one day after hitting her head. Then he tried to whet her appetite again, but he didn't expect that everything went wrong. In the following time, Lily not only didn't come to him to apologize, but she didn't even contact him via text messages or phone calls. Now she's in her senior year. The semester is coming soon. Jang Soon had planned his plans after graduation long ago, but now Lily's incident has disrupted his plans. Jang Soon was a little uncontrollable and inadvertently released the news that Lily had been raped. Come. He originally thought that if the news spread throughout the campus, everyone would start talking about it, and a cowardly and timid character like Chengbei would always be afraid of falling into his arms. However, he did not expect that Lily would not only be fine in the end, but also turn her classmates on. After talking about this matter for 2 days, no one mentioned it again. Jong-sun was anxious and panicked. The development of things was different from what he thought. He took the initiative to show off to Lily. If the two of them were dating at this moment, he had not been able to suppress Lily during this period. How could he possibly control her after they got married? After much thought, Jong-sun came up with another idea. At this moment, he firmly believed that it was impossible for a person like Luo Qi to fall in love with Lily. After all, this woman himself did not like her. Luo Qi was from a good background and was wealthy. With his fame and a lot of people who like him, how could he like something that he doesn't even like? Just thinking that Lily, whom he even disliked, now came to dislike him for dating someone else. Although Jong-sun admitted that he was not as good as Luo Qi, he still felt very uncomfortable. He had recently begun to court other women in the class, and in front of others. In front of Lily, he allowed the other girls to laugh and scold him. Not only did he not feel ashamed, he actually laughed with them and occasionally turned to look at Lily proudly. Lily had 2 classes in the morning. After the first class, Jong-sun lay down next to a girl's desk. The girl teased him like a dog and asked him to pick up something after throwing it. Jong-sun picked it up with a bang. While the girl was laughing so hard, he smiled and turned to stare at Lily, with a proud look on his face, as if to say that Lily didn't like him, and he might not be able to like Lily either. Occasionally, when he saw the scene out of the corner of his eye, a sarcastic look appeared on his face. When Chengbei was devoted to him, Jong-sun was picky and despicable, and used despicable methods to ruin other people's lives. He wanted both dignity and face. For his own selfish desires, he came up with such despicable methods. Now that he ignored him, she no longer acted like a grown man, and now she was happy to be teased like this. Lily turned her pen. She had been able to do almost all the movements in Xingchen's physical training recently, and Chen Lily's body was also much stronger than before. But she was not Jong-sun's opponent at the moment. There were still 2 months until the end of the semester. By then, it would not be difficult for Lily to be confident that she could deal with Jong-sun. She glanced at Jong-sun again and lowered her head. He lowered his eyelids. When Jong-sun was smiling at others, he would turn his head to look at Lily. Seeing that she was not staring at him, he gradually lost his composure. When the second class was over, he saw that Lily had already, when he was packing his things and preparing to leave, Jong-sun finally couldn't help it, stood up and stopped towards Lily. "Lily, what's happened to you recently? You didn't say anything when I asked you what happened, and you ignored me for no reason. I heard people in the class say that you were raped. Is this true? Even if it's true, yes, I won't dislike you, you know my character." Before he could finish his words, Lily stood up and kicked the chair, and the wooden chair quickly slid towards Jong-sun after she kicked it. The corner of the chair happened to hit Jong-sun's leg bone, and he couldn't help but scream in pain. Before he could finish the rest of his words, he instinctively lowered his head and hugged the hit leg, and his face suddenly darkened. "What do you mean?" Jong-sun was furious and his voice suddenly became louder. He was about to reach out to grab Lily. Before he could catch her, Lily had already shrunk her head and flexibly moved around him. When he got up, he was about to kick the chair to trip him again, but Luo Qi's voice rang at the door of the classroom, "Lily, let's go." Luo Qi's slender figure stood at the door of the classroom, with picturesque features. The simple white shirt worn on him looked like pear blossoms in March and April, giving people a fresh and chilly feeling. When he spoke, his eyes were fixed on Lily, and he turned a blind eye to other people's eyes on him. He was holding a small box in his hand. He had classes at school this morning, and he and Lily went out together in the morning. The door should have been closed by now. When many students in the class saw Luoqi, they couldn't help but look at Lily hatefully. At first, Luoqi also pulled Lily away, but at that time, the classmates in the school quickly abandoned the matter after being enthusiastic about it for a while. Everyone had similar thoughts to Jang Seun, thinking that people like Luoqi, it was not that there were no beauties in his major when he was in school, but he didn't like any of them. After he was taken care of and went abroad, he didn't hear any scandals about him at all. He was as fresh and clean as a bucket of spring water. There are many girls who admire him, but none of them dare to confess to him. I originally thought that such a male god would not know what kind of beauty he would match in the future. There is no way he would fall in love with someone like Cheng Bei. Fat girl. Many girls who believe that their status and appearance are not bad dare to take action, but unexpectedly, Luoqi showed a look that was very familiar with Lily and called her name intimately. If the first time he left with Lily could be said to be a coincidence, the second time the two met together, it could no longer be said to be a coincidence. All the classmates in the class looked in disbelief, and Jang Seun was also stunned. Under the gaze of everyone, Lily resisted the urge to kick Jang Seun again, and then turned around and walked towards Luoqi. To be continued.